Every paramedic who works this route disappears after midnight. The sirens' wail was still echoing in my ears when I first heard about the midnight route. I'd only been working with Black Hollow EMS for 2 weeks when the rumors started. Whispers in the break room, nervous glances during shift rotations. The phrase midnight route kept surfacing like a bloated corpse in murky water. I asked around, jokingly at first, but no one wanted to say much. Just vague nods, a pat on the back. Some even crossed themselves like we were in a bad movie. And then came the assignment. They say every town has its secrets. Black Hollow had more than most, tucked beneath a fog that never fully lifted. I didn't believe in ghost stories. Not really. I was a rational man, a trained EMT. But that changed the night I was assigned Route 41B, the midnight route. I'm sharing this not because I expect to be believed. I'm sharing this because I don't think I have much time left. The call came in at 11:47 p.m. Just the usual static crackle from dispatch and a tired voice. Unit 7, respond to 911 medical, Ridgeway and Old Pine. Unresponsive male, possible cardiac. It sounded normal enough. Routine. Copy that. I replied, already sliding into the driver's seat. I glanced at my partner, Sarah. She'd been with Black Hollow EMS for over a year. She was pale, knuckles white as she gripped the clipboard. Ridgeway and Old Pine? She asked slowly, as if confirming something awful. Yeah. Why? That's on Route 41B. I shrugged. So? Sarah looked out the window, eyes darting into the night like she expected something to be waiting there. Nothing. Just never had a call down that way before. Not this late. We drove in silence. Route 41B twisted away from the main road like a forgotten vein. The GPS flickered for a second, then returned with a new ETA. Fog was rolling in, thick, unnatural. I slowed the ambulance down. The trees on either side grew denser, casting warped shadows across the road. My radio started hissing softly. Not loud, not urgent, but steady, like it was breathing. I looked over at Sarah. She was staring straight ahead, jaw tight. You okay? No, she said, but let's get this over with. At 12:06 a.m., we reached the pinpoint location. Nothing was there. No house, no lights, just the woods and a narrow dirt path leading into darkness. Is this right? I asked. Sarah didn't answer. She was already out of the ambulance, grabbing the med bag. We followed the path, our flashlights cutting through the mist. A rusted mailbox stuck out of the ground, unreadable. The trees around us creaked, like something was shifting. Waking up, then we saw him. A man was lying in the dirt, face pale, lips blue, shirt soaked in sweat. He was breathing, barely. No pulse, Sarah muttered, checking his vitals. Help me roll him. We prepped the AED and began compressions. As I placed the pads, something strange caught my eye, a faint, shimmering outline behind the trees, like a heat wave or mirage. I blinked. It was gone. Sarah looked up. Did you hear that? What? She paused, listening. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the woods. Slow, deliberate. Let's move him now, she said, panic rising in her voice. We half-carried, half-dragged the man back toward the ambulance. My flashlight flickered. The radio was hissing louder now, words buried beneath static. They're watching, always watching. Get out too late. The man suddenly jerked upright, eyes wide and black like ink. He grabbed my arm. Turn back, he rasped. They know you're here now. And then he collapsed. We made it back to the ambulance, loaded him in. I turned the ignition, nothing. Dead. Not even a click. The GPS started spinning. The screen flashed. No escape. Sarah slammed her fists on the dashboard. We need to run. Now. Run where? But she was already out the door. I followed, flashlight shaking in my hand. The woods weren't empty anymore. Figures were moving, barely visible. All black, no faces, just eyes. And they were getting closer. Sarah grabbed my arm, yanking me behind a tree. We're not supposed to be here after midnight, she whispered. They only let you in once. What are they? I asked. Her mouth opened to answer, but she froze. Something was behind me. I turned. It wasn't a person. It was a shape, tall, stretching upward like a column of smoke. No face, no body, just an outline, a presence. I couldn't move. My limbs refused to obey. Then it spoke, not out loud, but in my head. You don't belong here, but you will. I woke up in the ambulance. Alone. The man we rescued was gone. Sarah was gone. The dashboard clock read 12:01 a.m. Again. I turned the key. The engine started. The GPS blinked back on, cheerful as ever. Destination. Home. I drove back in a daze. When I reached the station, no one asked about the call. The logbook was empty. Dispatch claimed no record of Route 41B. No call. No patient. Sarah never came back. They said she quit, transferred, vanished. And now I get the calls. Every midnight. The radio crackles. The GPS pings. And the fog rolls in. I think next time they won't let me leave. It had been 3 days since the night Sarah vanished. 3 days since that ghost of a man gripped my arm and told me to turn back. Since I saw figures in the woods with eyes like dead stars. And since Route 41B took her, swallowed her whole, I hadn't slept properly since. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same things. Branches twisting into claws, the flickering of emergency lights, and Sarah standing in the fog with her mouth sewn shut, trying to scream. The worst part? No one at the station believed a word of it. They told me Sarah resigned, took a transfer to a hospital in another county. But when I tried calling her number, it rang 4 times, and then cut off with a strange, wet click. Not a voicemail, just silence. I started digging. If I was going to survive this job, I needed answers. They told me not to ask about the paramedics who disappeared. They told me to keep my head down. They told me Sarah left. But the fog keeps coming back every night. And now I'm starting to hear her voice on the radio. I stayed late at the station that night. I pretended to do paperwork, but I was really waiting, watching. At 11:50 p.m., I slipped into the records room. It was a mess of dust and disorganization, filled with filing cabinets no one had touched in years. I started searching by date. I was looking for any references to Route 41B, old reports, incident logs, anything. That's when I found it. A manila folder buried under a stack of expired certifications, labeled in faded red pen. Route 41B, non-compliance, do not file. Inside were reports dating back over a decade. At least 6 paramedics had vanished under strange circumstances after midnight calls in the same region. One EMT reportedly walked into the woods mid-call and was never found. Another's last dispatch was a garbled scream. No follow-up, no investigations, no official notes. They were all marked as AWOL. At the bottom of the folder was a grainy photo. I squinted at it. 2 paramedics, 1 woman, 1 man, standing by an ambulance on a foggy road. The woman was Sarah, and the man next to her? I'd never seen him before, but he looked terrified. Then my radio buzzed on my belt. Unit 7, respond to emergency call on Old Pine Road. Possible overdose. Caller disconnected. I stared at the wall clock. 11:59 p.m. The voice didn't sound like dispatch. It was distorted, slightly off, like someone was mimicking a human voice, but couldn't quite get it right. I knew I shouldn't go. I went anyway. The fog greeted me as soon as I turned onto Old Pine Road. It wasn't normal fog. It clung to the ground like it was alive, crawling between trees and lapping at the tires of the ambulance. My headlights barely pierced it. The location was nearly identical to the night we lost Sarah. But this time, something was waiting. Standing in the middle of the road was a figure in a paramedic uniform. I slammed the brakes. It didn't move. I slowly stepped out, heart pounding. "Sarah," I called. The figure didn't respond. I walked closer, flashlight trained on its face. It wasn't her. It wasn't anyone. Its face was smooth, skin stretched tightly over the skull like plastic. No eyes, no mouth, just the impression of human features, carved by something that didn't understand what a person should look like. Then it opened its mouth impossibly wide, and Sarah's voice came out. "Turn back! Please, it's watching." The figure convulsed, collapsing on itself like a balloon deflating, until it was just a puddle of black tar on the road. I backed away, heart hammering. The radio on my hip chirped again. "You heard her. Turn back." I drove, fast, but no matter how far I went, the road didn't end. The GPS kept looping back to the same location. I passed the same tree with a broken branch, the same mailbox, the same decaying deer carcass that had somehow been rearranged, its limbs placing strange symbols on the asphalt. The road wasn't a road anymore. It was a trap. I stopped the ambulance. There was no more point in pretending this was a normal night. If I wanted to survive, if I wanted to find Sarah, I had to go back in. I grabbed the med bag, slung it over my shoulder, and followed the trail into the woods. The forest was wrong. It wasn't just dark. It absorbed the light. My flashlight barely lit more than a few feet in front of me, and the trees weren't quiet. They whispered. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then the whispers formed words. "She's still here. Don't look behind you." He never left. The path twisted like a serpent. At one point, I found a rusted old stretcher half buried in leaves. Blood smeared the handles. The nameplate had been scratched off. Further ahead, a shape loomed in the distance. A cabin. Old, rotting, half swallowed by the woods. The door creaked open as I approached, even though I hadn't touched it. Inside was pitch black and cold, bitterly, unnaturally cold. Then I saw it on the far wall. A mirror. It was shattered into 5 jagged pieces, each one reflecting a different scene. A paramedic screaming as he's dragged into the earth. Sarah running through the forest, pursued by shadows. My own face, bleeding from the eyes. The interior of the ambulance, empty, dark, alone. A blank mirror. I stepped closer to that 5th shard, and my flashlight died. In the dark, something moved. A hand grabbed mine. Warm. Human. "Sarah?" Her voice was faint. Weak, but real. "Don't let go," she whispered. But then a second hand grabbed my shoulder, and it wasn't human. I woke up outside the cabin, drenched in sweat, covered in scratches. The forest was still, and the mirror shards were gone. The ambulance was waiting at the edge of the woods, intact, no signs of damage, lights flashing like nothing had happened. But in the back compartment, written in blood on the wall, were the words, "Route 41 be does not forget." When I returned to the station, the clock read 12:01 a.m., exactly the same as last time, and on my desk was Sarah's badge. No one saw who put it there. No one else remembered her name. But I know she's still out there, somewhere, calling to me through broken radios and shattered glass. And I know this route isn't finished with me yet. It's been 5 days since I walked into the woods, since I touched that mirror, since I heard Sarah's voice. 5 days of silence. No calls after midnight. No strange figures in the road. No fog, no whispers. Just normalcy. And that terrified me more than anything else, because it meant something was waiting. They think I'm losing it. They think I'm making up stories. But when the fog returns, they'll understand. They'll hear the voices too. Because this time, Route 41B isn't just calling for me. It's calling for all of us. I didn't tell anyone about what I saw in the cabin, about Sarah's voice, or the second hand that pulled me back. There's no explaining something like that without sounding crazy. But something was different after I returned. People looked at me differently. My supervisor, Captain Ellis, called me into his office. He shut the door behind me with a quiet click. "You've been snooping," he said, finger steepled beneath his chin, digging through records, staying past shift, asking questions about Route 41B. I didn't deny it. "You think you're the first?" he asked. "You're not." He leaned forward. "Tell me what you saw." I hesitated, but his eyes, they weren't mocking. They were haunted. So I told him everything. The forest, The creature was Sarah's voice. The mirror, the second hand, the cabin, the words written in blood. When I finished, he sighed and pulled out a bottle from his drawer. "I knew this day would come again," he said, pouring 2 fingers of bourbon. "It always does." Then he told me a story. 22 years ago, Ellis was fresh out of training. Young, green, full of ideals. His first midnight shift took him down Route 41B after a call about a car crash. He found the wreck. And something else. A man, one of the passengers, was still alive, drenched in blood but conscious. He kept whispering the same phrase over and over. They watched from behind the glass. Ellis didn't understand. He thought the guy was delirious. But when he lifted the man into the rig and turned around, all the windows in the ambulance had frosted over from the inside, and in each pane their eyes. He quit the next morning, but the memory never left. "They show you what you're afraid to face," he said, his hand trembling around the glass. "And if you're not strong enough, they take you." "Who are they?" I asked. He shook his head. "They've always been here." That night, I found the courage to listen to Sarah's old dispatch tapes. They were buried in the digital archive. Flag is corrupted, but still accessible if you knew how to bypass the filter. I found her final call. At first, it sounded normal. "Dispatch, this is Unit 9. On scene. Patient unconscious. No visible injuries." Then the tone changed. There was a rustling, static, a strange gurgling noise. And then Sarah's voice, frantic, desperate. "Something's wrong. The trees are moving. There's someone else here. It's watching me through the window. It looks like..." The recording cut out. Then, clear as day, something else spoke. Something not human, not even trying to be. A voice deep and hollow. "We see you now." That night I went back, not to the woods, to the mirror. At the back of the station's storage locker was an old gear closet no one used anymore. I had the key. Ellis gave it to me before he left that afternoon, his expression unreadable. Inside, dusty equipment lined the shelves. But taped to the wall was a small square mirror. It was cracked, just like the ones in the cabin. And when I looked into it, I didn't see myself. I saw Sarah, strapped to a stretcher, eyes wide with terror. Behind her, shadows moved, tall and thin and shifting like smoke. I reached out to touch the mirror, and my hand went through. Suddenly, I was standing in a corridor made of glass. Floor, ceiling, walls, and behind every pane, figures watched me. Not reflections, things behind the glass. They didn't move. They didn't blink. They just stared. I walked forward. Every step echoed forever, like I was inside an endless prism. The further I went, the darker the glass became. The reflections started to change. Not mirrors anymore. Memories. I saw myself as a child, crying at my mother's funeral. I saw my first failed resuscitation, an old man in a trailer, his daughter sobbing beside me. I saw Sarah, standing in front of me, reaching out with blood-stained hands. "You left me," she whispered. And then the corridor ended. At the far wall was a massive pane of glass, black as obsidian. I stepped close and saw my own face. But it wasn't me. The eyes were wrong. Too dark, too wide, too hungry. Then the reflection smiled, and its lips moved. "Let's trade places." The glass shattered. I woke up in the back of the ambulance. It was 12:07 a.m. The fog was back, and so was Sarah. She was in the driver's seat, staring ahead, hands clenched on the wheel. "Sarah," I whispered. She turned, slowly. Her eyes weren't hers. Too glossy, too deep, too empty. "You came back," she said, but her voice sounded like many voices speaking in unison. I reached for the door. It was locked. The ambulance engine roared to life on its own, the gear shift snapping into drive. We sped down Route 41B, the fog swallowing everything. And in the mirror above me, I didn't see my face anymore. I saw the man in the first picture, the one standing next to Sarah. Terrified, trapped, exactly where I was now. I don't know how I escaped. I just remember waking up in the break room, lying on the floor, blood dripping from my nose. The others said I collapsed from exhaustion. They didn't believe me when I said I'd spoken to Sarah. When I said the mirror showed me something. When I said it tried to replace me. But something's wrong now. The reflections in every surface linger too long. Mirrors, windows, even puddles. Sometimes I see him, my reflection, but he's smiling when I'm not. And he's getting bolder. Every night, the fog creeps closer to town. And I swear the ambulance drives itself sometimes. I hear footsteps in the station halls when no one's there. Ellis quit 2 days ago. He left a note in my locker. If you see yourself in the glass, run. If it talks back, it's already too late. They say your reflection can't hurt you. They say it's just light bouncing off your face. But what happens when your reflection moves before you do? Because I've seen it now, the thing that lives in the glass. And it wants out. After that night, the night I saw Sarah behind the wheel and felt the glass shatter around me, I stopped sleeping. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those corridors of mirrors again. And the eyes, always the eyes. Watching, waiting, reflecting everything I didn't want to see. I tried quitting. I walked into the chief's office, threw my badge on his desk, and told him I was done. He just looked at me and said, "You can't quit. Not now. It's already chosen you." And then he shut the door. Things got worse after that. I'd hear dispatch calls that didn't exist, crackling to the radio at night, always around 12:06 a.m. Unit 9, respond overturned vehicle. Unit 9, patient unconscious in the woods. Always Unit 9. Always my unit. But there were no calls logged. One night, I followed the voice. I took the ambulance and drove the route I swore I'd never take again. Route 41B. The fog was waiting for me at the tree line. Thicker than before. Denser, like it had substance now. I turned on the high beams. That was a mistake, because standing in the center of the road was a figure in a paramedic uniform. Motionless, covered in blood. I stopped the rig. My hands trembled as I stepped out. "Sarah?" No response. I got closer and saw the name tag. W. Daniels, a paramedic who'd gone missing 6 years ago. His skin was gray, like paper soaked in rain. His eyes were glassy, and his mouth opened slowly, like a marionette being tugged by unseen strings. "Behind the glass," he whispered. Then he crumpled the ground like a puppet with cut cords, and shattered into 1,000 shards like he was made of mirror. I screamed, but the shards didn't just scatter. They crawled. Each shard twisted on the ground, edges clicking and grinding like insect legs, forming into shapes, hands, eyes, mouths. They were trying to climb my legs, slice through my boots, crawl inside my skin. I ran. I don't remember how I got back to the station, but I woke up in the supply room, drenched in sweat, my hands bleeding from a dozen cuts. The strange thing? No one noticed. It's like I never left. But that's when I realized something chilling. Time stops on Route 41B. The clocks in the rig, the radio time, even my phone. It all froze at 12:06 a.m. the moment I crossed the fog. Which means Sarah might still be alive. Trapped like I was, or worse, used. I had to know the truth. I went back into the archive room. There was one file red flagged, no access allowed. But Ellis had shown me a backdoor login before he left. The file was labeled Mirror Project, Operation Nightwatch 1994. I opened it. Inside were grainy photographs of Route 41B before it was even paved, back when it was just forest. Then I saw military trucks, tents, lab equipment, and then images of glass structures built deep in the woods. Not mirrors, portals. Apparently, during the 90s, a government experiment was conducted there. Something about dimensional convergence, trying to observe parallel realities through specially treated reflective surfaces. The goal was surveillance. But something looked back. Something learned. They shut it down after multiple disappearances. Burned the site. Closed the program. But the damage was done. The mirror world didn't need a lab anymore. It spread. And the glass never forgets. I started avoiding reflections after that. No mirrors, no windows, no puddles, not even polished doorknobs. But they found me anyway. At night, I'd hear whispering outside my bedroom door, my voice begging to be let in. One night, I woke up and found my bedroom mirror uncovered. I always kept it draped in a towel. Now it was bare, and in it, I saw myself sitting on the bed. Only, I was still standing. The reflection turned its head slowly toward me, smiled, and whispered, "You're not real anymore." I smashed the mirror with a lamp and screamed so loud my neighbors banged on the wall. But when I looked down at the shards, they weren't reflecting anything. Just black, like they were tiny windows into another place. I called Ellis. He didn't answer, so I drove to his house. The lights were on, door ajar. Inside, the air was cold. Still, the living room mirror had words written on it in what looked like condensation, or something thicker. "You should have left when I told you." There was no sign of Ellis, only his radio, still crackling with static, and a photograph lying face down on the floor. I picked it up. It was Ellis, Sarah, and me, but it couldn't be. I'd never seen that photo before, and the version of me in the picture was smiling wider than I've ever smiled in my life. Too wide, almost wrong, like someone trying to wear my face. I drove straight to the station, heart pounding, throat dry. As I pulled in, I noticed my own ambulance, Unit 9, already parked there, but I was still inside it. My reflection was in the rear-view mirror, just sitting in the driver's seat, staring at me. I stepped out. So, did it. We stood across from each other in the parking lot, the overhead floodlights buzzing, casting twin shadows. "I want what you have," it said, voice distorted. "You opened the door." It lunged. We fought, if you could call it that. Every move I made, it mirrored. Every swing, every grab, it already knew what I'd do, because it was me. But one thing it didn't have was fear. I used that. I ran toward the station, toward the glass doors, and ducked last second. It followed blindly, and crashed into the reflection head first. The glass absorbed it, sucked it back into that shimmering world behind the surface. For now, I've taped every mirror in my home. I carry no phone, no badge, no shiny surfaces. But I can still feel it. It's close, watching, waiting for the next moment. I glance into a reflection and don't blink in time. And it's not just me anymore. Last night, another unit responded to a midnight call on Route 41B. They didn't return. We found the ambulance parked at the edge of the fog. Lights off, doors open. Inside, written in smudged blood across the dash, were the words, "One of you must stay." The fog is thicker now, and it's spreading beyond the trees. The glass is no longer just watching. It's reaching out. There's no going back now. The line between reality and reflection has blurred, and something is bleeding through. They tried to contain it. They failed. And now it's my turn to choose, to run, or to seal the door behind me forever. But no matter what I choose, one of us must stay. I spent the last 3 days off-grid, holed up in the basement of an abandoned firehouse outside city limits. No mirrors, no metal, no screens, just concrete, silence, and the constant fear that if I closed my eyes for more than a few seconds, I'd wake up in the other place, the place with all the reflections. But hiding isn't a solution, because now it's not just about me. I finally got Ellis's backup drive to decrypt. Hidden inside, buried under layers of code, was a single video file. Timestamp, 1995. Title, Final Trial, Subject 6, Route 41B. I played it. The footage was grainy black and white. A man, clearly terrified, sat strapped inside an ambulance. Mirrors lined the walls around him. An intercom clicked on. Begin phase transition. The mirror started to ripple like water. And then the man screamed. Not because of what he saw, but because the mirrors didn't show him anymore. They showed something else. Something watching, copying, learning. And when the transition ended, he was gone, replaced by something that wore his face, but not his soul. That's when I understood. Every paramedic who disappears on Route 41B isn't lost. They're replaced. The mirror world isn't just a reflection. It's a prison and a bridge. And someone opened the gate permanently the night Sarah vanished. She's not dead. She's not missing. She's on the other side. And she's been trying to contact me ever since. I had one shot left. The last reported location of a disappeared unit was near the old access road that led to the original Mirror Project lab, the one that was supposed to have been burned down and buried decades ago. I followed the coordinates, through fog, ash trees, and silence so thick it pressed on my eardrums, until I found it. The entrance was half collapsed. The lab was in ruins, overtaken by moss and vines. But inside, the glass still worked. A full-length, flawless mirror stood upright in the middle of the main chamber. No dust, no cracks, just endless silver. And in the reflection, I saw Sarah, standing there, pale, lips trembling. "Help me," she mouthed. I stepped closer. She mirrored every movement. Then, with a trembling hand, she reached through the glass. I should have backed away. I should have run. But I didn't. I took her hand. And everything went black. When I woke up, I was there, not in the lab, not in the woods, but in the mirror world. The sky was gray and motionless. Trees looked like cardboard cutouts. And there was no sound, none, except for breathing. Not mine. Sarah stood beside me, real now, flesh and blood. They trap us in here, one at a time. Every time someone comes through, one of us has to stay. I looked behind her. There were others, Ellis, Daniels, a dozen other paramedics, all watching. Some looked human, others didn't anymore. Their eyes were too wide, their smiles too sharp, because they'd been here too long. And it had changed them, warped them. Sarah grabbed my arm. "You can still go back, but if you do, you must leave someone behind." I shook my head. "There has to be another way." She lowered her voice. "There's one mirror left, one that controls the gate. Break it and seal this world forever. But you won't escape, not if you're still inside." She led me to the control chamber, if you could call it that, a circular room with a giant rotating mirror in the center, surrounded by floating shards that hummed with energy. Sarah held my hand. "Choose. Go back, or end it." That's when the others arrived. Ella spoke first. "They lied to us, said we could return. But the gate doesn't work like that. It's a trade." Daniels was less kind. "You break that mirror, you trap us forever. We become shadows. Ghosts." "You already are," I said, but I could see the truth in Sarah's eyes. They weren't just waiting here. They were protecting us. Because if one more person escaped, the thing on the other side would be free. Not just a reflection anymore, but real. I made my choice. I grabbed the emergency axe from the wall and swung it at the mirror's core. The glass screamed. Not shattered. Screamed. The shards convulsed, spinning violently. A storm of reflection engulfed the chamber. Flashes of lives, faces, memories, all whirling through the air. And in the center, me, but not me, the mirror me, grinning with teeth too white and too many. "You should have traded," it hissed. I screamed and swung the axe again, driven by rage, by love, by terror. And then, silence. The mirror split down the middle. Cracks webbed through its surface like veins under skin. And finally, darkness. I woke up in my ambulance. Engine off. Radio dead. Midnight sky above. But no fog. No Route 41B. Just a silence. I staggered out, bleeding and dazed, and found myself parked outside the hospital bay. The world was normal again. Real. It's been 3 weeks. The route has been officially closed. The department called it a geological collapse and rerouted all emergency paths. No one questions it. No one asks about the disappearances. Sarah's photo now hangs in the hallway, labeled missing in the line of duty. But I know better. She's not missing. She's watching, protecting the door from the inside, because I chose to come back, and she chose to stay. There's just one thing that still haunts me. Every night, just after midnight, I hear static from my old radio. It always starts the same. Unit 9, respond to overturned vehicle, last seen on Route 41B. I never answer. But last night, the static turned into a voice. My voice. And it whispered, "You broke the mirror, but you forgot the reflections." And now, every time I pass a window, a puddle, or a dark screen, I see it again. That other version of me, smiling, waiting, because the mirror might be shattered, but the things behind it are still watching. And next time, they won't ask to trade.